discuss one of the biggest issues that's been on our clients' mind that we've been addressing with them the past couple of weeks, with everything going on right now with the pandemic and all of us self-quarantining ourselves. And the issue is, how are these new CDC guidelines and all the health precautions we're taking and the self-quarantine affecting our rights as parents with visitation in regards to child custody plans, parenting plans, and how we are co-parenting through this? There are three different ways we have seen this affect our clients that Jeanette and I wanted to discuss with you guys tonight. And we'll just start going at them one after the other. Jeanette, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So, Jeanette, one of the biggest ones that both you and I have seen is a parent withholding visitation from the other parent. Two parents are co-parenting in a parenting plan and a custody agreement with each other, and one parent is withholding visitation from the other because of the self-quarantine. Mm-hmm. And they are doing so because they're saying they don't want, they don't feel safe to leave their child to go to the other parent's home during this time. They really want to keep their child at home and quarantine with them. And we are getting clients who are coming to us and saying, you know, he or she did not bring or drop off our son or our daughter during the typical drop-off time. He or she denied me my visitation time. What can I do? So, mm-hmm. Jeanette, how have you been advising our clients on this?
Yeah, so several different counties have issued clarification statements to explain what these emergency orders, how they affect parenting time. And every single county that has issued one of these clarification statements, they have said that we need to stick to the parenting plans just like a regular school calendar is in session. So if a parent's withholding time and it's just out of fear, there's no other rational reason, then it's a contempt of a court order. Now, it is important to really look at yourself and make sure that there are not things that you're doing in your home that could give a reasonable explanation for withholding visitation. So if it's just based on things in the world aren't safe right now, and the child, I'm not comfortable with the child leaving my home, that's contempt of the court order. And we can file for contempt. It's complicated right now because the courts are actually closed. There's very limited issues that the courts are handling right now. So at this point, we could give some advice on how to communicate with your co-parent, potentially write a letter to your co-parent, but it will be when courts are addressing these issues again, when a contempt could be filed. But documentation is everything.
Yeah, so hopefully most families that are facing this, they've already had a good communication system between the two parents. They've been co-parenting pretty well together. And the first ideal situation is if they can come to an agreement amongst each other on how to get through this, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely the first step, is to have a conversation with your co-parent and try to come to an agreement about how the situation will be handled.
We actually had a client, you and I, last week that we had this exact issue with. And I basically had the conversation with them that let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she really thinks that this is a legit reason to withhold the child. Let's start from that point of view and first document that we're, reaching out to her and saying, hey, I am doing everything to follow the CDC guidelines. I am self-quarantining myself. Here's what my routine looks like. Make him or her, the other co-parent, feel safe of what you're doing, how you're exercising these health precautions. And if they're still not abiding by that, then hopefully us issuing a letter to the other co-parent with the statements from the court will wake them up and see, actually, this could be grounds for contempt. Because I also want to give a lot of people the benefit of that they may just not be aware of that.
A lot of people are reacting out of fear and making rash decisions, and they're not aware. I mean, some of these statements, it's been just in the past few days. Attorneys are just now getting up to speed with all of this. So I certainly wouldn't expect a parent to know about this.
Yeah, and so let's talk about now the other scenario we've also have been facing for our clients this past couple of weeks, which is you actually have reason to feel unsafe to send your children off to the other home.
Yeah.
Whether it's, like you said, CDC guidelines are not being followed. There's also a lot of families that had spring break plans and they're thinking, well, I'm just going to throw the kids and take them to the mountains or to the beach. Or they're having non-relative adults or other children come through the home. So can you kind of go through those scenarios with us?
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of communication right now about concerns on these issues. For example, birthday parties apparently still happening, and travel, those things that you just mentioned. And this is a more complicated scenario than the reverse, where it's a contempt of a court order and it's clear. In this situation, yes, we're supposed to follow the parenting plan. Yes, it's a court order, but we also have a situation where, as parents, we have to keep our children safe. So while this is unprecedented, we don't have clauses about pandemics in our parenting plans, and we've never seen this as lawyers, but we can use any example for concern with health and safety. So what I'm telling clients is the same thing I would tell a client who's concerned about a severe mental health issue or an alcohol or drug problem that's causing a safety issue. And that's, you're supposed to follow the court order, but sometimes as a parent, you have to weigh the danger to your child if you follow that court order. So if you're in that situation, I think it's really important to know the CDC recommendations well. Don't be making assumptions. Don't be getting your information from people on Facebook. You want to make sure that you really understand what the recommendations are and what you're supposed to be doing. In addition to really reading those CDC recommendations, a number of different counties have issued the stay in place orders. And for example, DeKalb just did a shelter in place order a couple of days ago. And I was combing through that today to see, okay, what exactly is it that parents in my county are supposed to be doing? So read through that, because it's very detailed about what you are and are not allowed to do. And I imagine that's the case with every county. So make sure that there really are violations of these recommendations and of these emergency orders. If there aren't, and maybe you've gotten information that you misunderstood, then reevaluate that. But if you do have another parent who is creating risk, then you have to decide if that risk is so high that it's worth it to you to potentially have a motion for contempt filed and have to answer to a judge. And sometimes as parents, the answer to that is, this is what I need to do to protect my child.
And given that this is, like you said, such uncharted territory for the family law judges and the family law courts, we're not quite sure at this point how the judges are going to handle families or parents who have been in contempt for violations of CDC guidelines on the other end. So we at this point, all we can do is just advise to document, and get advice from your attorney to make sure that you're really weighing this against the CDC guidelines and not, like you said, what your neighbor said or, friends on Facebook said.
Yeah. And documentation is so important really in any custody situation. But it's the same in this one, as far as making sure in writing you've clearly communicated with your co-parent and expressed exactly what your concerns are, and that will just help later on.
Would you also say it would be prudent to first give the co-parent an opportunity to correct behavior before you
Absolutely.
withhold visitation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Give them the opportunity to correct behavior. Another possibility would be insisting on a 14-day quarantine. So I'll give you an example, and I'm making this up, but say a parent flew in today from New York and there was concern that they weren't social distancing. They were just on an airplane coming from an area that has a lot of the coronavirus cases. I don't think it would be unreasonable to say, I'm not comfortable sending our child with you right now, but it's a 14-day incubation period.
Yeah.
Let's wait that 14 days, and then you can have makeup time. And at least offering that makeup time and having a real basis for the withholding of visitation in my opinion, reasonable. And it's going to look better in front of a judge if it gets to that you really tried.
Ideal situation is that the pattern of behavior had been that you abided by the parenting plan. You
Yeah.
always made the child available when you were supposed to, and you can really isolate this as a instance that was
Yes.
responding to CDC guidelines. Whereas you're in a situation where there's a pattern of behavior, parental
Mhm.
alienation, and now we tack this upon it,
Yeah, that's
it's
going to look
gonna
really
look
bad.
different.
And it's also important for parents to understand that this could be used for the other parent to build up a modification of custody case against you.
Mm,
So, some strong advice I have for parents is if you and your co parent are having a disagreement on the interpretation of the guidelines or when these shelter in place orders, err on the side of the more conservative parent. Now,
mm,
sometimes if it's you can't ever see the child can't leave the house, that's not reasonable. But if it's a situation where, can we go on vacation overnight, or is it okay to have a play date with the next door neighbors who only see us, or just interpretations like that, it's better to err on the side of the conservative approach if there's a disagreement, because it could be used to build a case and say this parent was not making good decisions, was not keeping, or maybe they have final decision making on medical, and now a parent might want to change that later. It just gives too much ammunition and also demonstrates your ability to co-parent.
mm.
I think that is, I think we're going to have a lot of cases once courts open that has concerns about a parent's ability to co-parent with the other. Because if in the middle of a pandemic, you can't use compassion and compromise, you probably can't do that any other time as well. And that really reflects on our abilities to co-parent.
Now, there is also the third scenario where one of our clients, actually yesterday, Sunday evening, I was speaking to him, and I personally just loved what he's doing, and I found it very worthy to highlight and also give parents that are doing this time and recognition, and also give them some advice. So this is one of our clients who lives in a different state than the child and the mother, and we are working out their custody plan as we speak. And he has actually foregone visitation, where he used to go and visit the children in a different state, because he does not feel that that would be in the children's best interest because of his job, what he's exposed to, and the fact that he's only able to self quarantine so much for his job, and
Yeah.
he didn't want the children to have to travel interstate during this time. And
Mm-hmm.
so his concern was, when the time comes when we're coming in to settle our custody plan, settle our parenting plan, could she use this against me that I gave up visitation time to keep the kids safe and
Mm-hmm.
quarantined at their home with their mother, to withhold visitation to withhold more custody rights from me?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. And I'm seeing this most with people who are healthcare workers and also
Yes.
the long distance travel situations. And where it's really coming up are states who are starting to restrict travel, where
Right.
or when there's a parenting plan that requires a child to get on an airplane and travel. And in those situations, it often, if not always, is the best decision to forego parenting time right now, even though, that's not ideal and we want to spend time with our kids, but it makes sense and there's a safety reason to do it. Now, just like everything, documentation is everything. So don't just stay silent and miss parenting time or be vague and why you're missing parenting time. You need to send a very clear email saying, here's the CDC guidelines, here is the reasons I'm concerned, and while I hate to do this, I think it's best for the children for me to not have this parenting time. And then I would also make it clear that you want makeup time when that's possible, and say, I hope that you will work with me to get extra time in the summer, or whatever makes sense, to show that you are wanting that time, and it's not just foregoing it because you don't want to be an involved parent. And also ask for scheduled phone calls, or
Right.
do everything you can to stay in touch.
Yeah, in this case, he's doing a fantastic job of having FaceTime with them every day. Get to see them on FaceTime every day, and journaling the fact that he's getting that time with them.
Yeah,
But you just really have to praise these parents that are giving up their time up with their children for
absolutely.
the best interest of the child. And I have every faith in the system to believe that the court will recognize them for that.
Hmm. And something else these parents can do that probably would be incredibly helpful for the parent who is ending up with more time right now because of the situation is helping remotely with homework. I'm
Yeah.
actually, that's a great way to stay involved. My dad is actually helping my son through Zoom with homework, and that's a way that a parent can be very involved. And even doctor's appointments, like some are remote doctor's appointments. So in those situations, even if it's an in-person doctor's appointment, insist on being on the phone at least, or FaceTiming. And we have so much technology available to us now that it's possible to be very involved even without that physical presence.
Oh, we're in a generation of Zoom now.
Yeah,
Jeanette, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you doing this with me this evening.
absolutely.
Um, Guys, we know there's so much more questions revolving the custody rights. I mean, we're just touching on visitation because that's the one we've been diving deep into for the past 2 weeks. Jeanette and I will get back on probably in a week or so and discuss education right now.
Mhm.
That's
Which is
going to be a
really tough.
hot one on how are
Mhm.
we co-parenting with the education now that it's
Yeah,
completely on our shoulders. Also, medical decision making. These are some very hot topics that are creating a lot of confusion for parents and
yeah,
making them wonder, how do I abide by the parenting plan yet still do what my child requires right now? If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here for you. We're working virtually, but our entire team has been doubling down on giving everybody the support they need during this time. So reach out if you need anything, and everyone have a wonderful night.
thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette.